Mahesh Bhupathi here with me on 94.3 Radio 1. It's High on Grass, our Wimbledon special. Hi Mahesh, thanks very much for being on this series.
Thanks for having me here.
First question, there are tennis tournaments and then there's Wimbledon. I mean, you've been going there for so long. What is it that makes it entirely special? I know there's the grass, I know there's the tradition. There's got to be a lot more than that.
I think every kid growing up and playing tennis dreams of playing Wimbledon. Obviously, winning a Wimbledon title is, a different dream altogether. So, it's like asking a cricketer why it's special to play at Lord's. It's very hard to explain, but, it's always a surreal feeling going back to Wimbledon, even though you've been there 20 years in a row.
In a sense, have some things changed? If those things have changed, what are those things? For example, the ball's changed, the color, for example, over the passage of time. Anything else that you can think of that has changed?
Yeah, I think the balls have changed, the speed of the court has changed. There have been amazing amount of enhancements to the Wimbledon property itself in terms of number of courts, locker rooms. We have a roof on top of center court. So a lot of things have changed, but Wimbledon is Wimbledon. It is just an amazing place.
Is the food the same from when you first went there as a young kid and now?
Funnily enough, it is. You've got your strawberries and cream, you've got your Pims, you've got your Dutchies, and nothing at Wimbledon really tradition-wise changes too much.
Are there any secret places where you can get the best strawberries and cream when you get off at Wimbledon Station, perhaps from there till the All England Club? Or would you say the All England Club itself has the best strawberries and cream?
Well, I would be biased and say, in the Players' Lounge, we obviously, fortunately, don't have to pay for them, so they probably taste a little better than they do on the grounds, where they're fairly expensive. But, strawberries and cream at Wimbledon is a must.
It's played in white. You've got to have white gear. The rebels over the sands of time, whether it's the Agassiz or the McEnroes, have had to conform. Why is white such an integral part? Is it just tradition or is there something more to it?
I think it is history and tradition. Like you said, the color came into tennis with Agassi and obviously generations in the future. But, just going to Wimbledon and knowing that everyone is in white, it still brings out that special entity that Wimbledon has.
Any quirky customs other than the white? Any particular things that you can think of?
If you notice, Wimbledon has no sponsors really on their backdrops. Every other major event has US Open has JP Morgan, French Open has BNP Paribas, but Wimbledon doesn't have sponsors. So they're very particular. A tournament like Wimbledon could probably close to double their revenues if they change that tradition, but it's so traditional there, and I think that's why the players feel, it's such a special event.
Also, the bowing down to royalty, almost like a half bow. Does that still happen? Do you still do that?
No, I think they changed that 2 years ago. I think they changed that, saying that it's not necessary for the men to bow and the women to courtesy. So, but still, the fact that the royal box is there nowadays, they have a superstar in Andy Murray, and the fact that he's been so successful, brings the real royalty out to watch. And again, that's part and parcel of the tradition.
Do you remember, Mahesh? You remember your first ever match at Wimbledon?
I do. I think it was a junior match. I think it was 1991. I had just come off 13 first-round losses in the junior singles on the European circuit, and I came to Wimbledon. And amazingly, I won my first junior match in Europe at Wimbledon. If I'm not wrong, it was Eric Taino from the US. Even as a junior, just the nerves and the butterflies when you're playing at Wimbledon was quite amazing.
And the first time you set foot on that grass, you remember that moment when you set foot in the gates of the All England Club?
Yeah, I've fortunately been there many times. My dad took me as a kid, I think when I was 11, when I was 13. So, going there, and I think I was there the year Becker lost in 97 to Peter Doohan. He was upset on court number 1. So I went there, and obviously there was always aspiration to play there, growing up as a kid.
Court number 1 is the graveyard court?
No, that's court 2.
Why is it called the graveyard court, other than the fact that people keep losing there?
Yeah, I think because a lot of the huge upsets in the past at Wimbledon have happened on court 2. Sampras and Agassi losing to Doug Flack, and there have been some amazingly high-profile match players that have gone down on court 2, so it got the nickname the graveyard.
Why is Wimbledon special to you personally? I mean, now we've talked about why it is so special in terms of tradition, but to you as Mahesh Bhupathi, the player, the person, why is it so special?
Indians follow Wimbledon in general. I mean, you might not even be a tennis fan, but when Wimbledon comes around, you kind of stand up and take notice. And of course, like I said, I've been there so many times as a kid and wanted to, play there someday, let alone being able to win 3 titles has been just, an amazing experience for me.
The game obviously has changed a hell of a lot. I mean, when we were kids, we used to see the serve and volley of the Beckers and the Edbergs, and before that, John McEnroe. And now it's more of a baseline slugfest. The reason for that. Do you think personally that's attractive enough for you and for the fans at Wimbledon?
I think there's two opinions to that. I think the game has been slowed down purposely. The balls are slower and heavier. The courts are slower. I mean, when Becker and Edberg and Krajicek and Cash and all these guys were dominating on the grass, Goran, there were complaints that the points were too short. There were no rallies. Today, people are complaining that the points are too long and there are too many rallies. So, it's never easy to please anyone. But I truly think that with Roger, Novak and Rafa, we're in a golden era of tennis. And I think we're very fortunate to be witnessing it.
You personally, do you prefer watching, let's say, a Becker tumbling to do a volley as opposed to, Roger and Rafa battling it out from the baseline?
I think it's great when you have contrasting matchups. I mean, when we had Agassi playing Sampras, one guy coming into the net at all times and one guy just plummeting the ball from the baseline, it's always great to watch. Today, unfortunately, you don't really have any serve and volleyers, but in the off chance that Michael Lodra, probably the only serve and volleyer left in singles, plays one of the top guys, it's always nice to watch.
Why have the courts become slower? Is there something to do with the drainage? Is it the quality of the grass they put in there? What's the deal?
I've been told that they started growing the grass differently in a different direction so that the ball checks up as it bounces. Again, just because the complaint was the points were too quick, the pundits were not able to watch longer points. Like I said, today tennis is more about physical fitness. We're seeing some of the greatest athletes in the world play these long 5-set matches. So it's good to see.
Tell us about your all-time favorite Wimbledon match, a match that you weren't participating in, as in a match that you saw and said, whoa, it just blew you off.
That's a tough one. I think in the recent decade, it would be two of Federer's matches. I think the final against Nadal that went 5 sets and the final against Roddick that also went 5 sets. And, both were amazing matches. I think he lost the one against Nadal and beat Roddick. I've been watching Wimbledon. I remember listening to the Kevin Curran Boris Becker final on radio commentary. So I've been watching a lot of tennis at Wimbledon and there have been really some amazing matches. The John Isner, Nicholas Mahut match. Nobody knew who they were before that match, but that was just out physically amazing what those guys did.
Your favorite Wimbledon match in which you played in?
I think there was a match that Leander and me played in 99 against LaRue O'Brien in the quarterfinal. We were the top seeds and in the quarterfinal, coming off winning the French Open, but we were down 2 sets to love. We found a way, I think just basis our reputation and our arrogance in that year because we were number one to turn the tide and win that match. Those guys were an amazing team because they went on to beat us in the final of the US Open. So winning that match and winning Wimbledon was, pretty cool.
Mahesh, we haven't talked about the ladies' game as yet. So now I'm going to say, pick a ladies' singles or doubles match that blew your mind at Wimbledon.
Steffi Graf and Monica Seles, those finals, and when Hingis played. And today, obviously, Serena, especially on the grass, is just a level above the rest. She's dominated the grass for the last decade. My favorite is Steffi.
The underdog always has a place at Wimbledon, and some of them have created the biggest upsets ever. In the recent past, of course, the Bartolis of this world. Even somebody like a Peter Doohan, who you mentioned, who came in and beat McEnroe at one point of time. Becker. Any underdog that you think who you never gave a chance at the beginning of a tournament, and suddenly he or she just landed in the semi-finals or in the finals. An underdog who used Wimbledon to power himself or herself to glory.
Well, I think Marion Bartoli is a great example. She was on the periphery of the top 10 for many, many years. And then, she makes that amazing breakthrough and wins the biggest tournament in the planet and amazingly announces her retirement 2 months later. So that's still yet to be explained. But I think she's, the right answer for that question.
And of course, guys like Pat Cash, who suddenly went on and did what they did.
Yeah, he ended up being able to win another one. It wasn't like a one slam wonder.
There are people who never won Wimbledon. Ivan Lendl spent his entire life trying to win, and your heart reached out to him. Ken Rosewell, for example, another man who kept, the wrong place at the wrong time, perhaps with Rod Laver. What is it that these guys lacked, or they just couldn't make it at Wimbledon?
I think Lendl probably played in what you could define as, in his style of tennis, the worst possible time in tennis era-wise. He had to beat Edberg, and if he beat Edberg, he had to play Boris. And if he beat Boris, he had to play the likes of Goran or, Courier. It was first golden era of tennis. So the fact that he made as many finals as he did was testimony to what a great player he was. And unfortunately, any great champion winning Wimbledon is the pinnacle. I'm sure he always looks back at his career and wishes he had won one of those. I think Pat Cash was probably his best shot.
A baseliner who changed the dynamics at Wimbledon. For all practical purposes, beyond, for example, won 6 French Open tournaments. He wasn't really a conventional serve volleyer in the scheme of things. And then Andre Agassi. So baseliners at Wimbledon. Who are the greats and who could you talk about?
Borg is the first. Then comes Andre and then Leighton Hewitt. He was the one that I think in the new era changed the fact that baseliner, I think when he would play Nalbandian in the final, it was a full-on baseline duel. I mean, I don't know how we can define Roger Federer as a baseliner because he's got amazing volleys. And then Nadal.
The farthest any Indian has gone Wimbledon is, of course, the great Ramanathan Krishnan. And then subsequently, Ramesh had and Vijay had a few quarterfinal berths in the singles, so to say. The greatest Indian in Wimbledon singles, who would that be? Even if you've not seen him or her play.
I think undoubtedly Ramanathan Krishnan. I mean, he also was playing, when Lever and Rosewall and Newcomb and Roach and all of them were competing. Some of the greatest names in the sport. And, he was consistently 3 in the world. 2-time semi-finalist. Wimbledon shows that it wasn't a flash in the pan. He is by far the greatest success story at Wimbledon for us.
Vijay himself, I mean, a very attractive game, very stylish to watch. A bit about him.
As proud as we are of Vijay's achievements, I think most of tennis would term him an underachiever. A lot of people felt he should have won Wimbledon. He had, I think, Jan Kodesh 2-1 and a breakup in the quarterfinal the year Jan Kodesh won. But yeah, I mean, he had great game for grass, and really, all of us wish he did it.
And Ramesh, a bit about him, please.
Ramesh was, classic. I mean, no matter who played him, everyone complained at the pace of his strokes, but everyone loved to watch him. Smooth as silk, they call him. He made, I think, one of the years I came with my dad as a kid, I remember he losing to Slobodan Jovanovic in the quarterfinal. So, yeah, quarterfinals at Wimbledon, another great story.
Who's the Indian who inspired you? I mean, who's the Indian who you looked at and said, man, exemplary as a player and spurred you on to higher glory?
It was Vijay. I think, Vijay and my dad have been friends for many years. And like I said, in the younger days when I did go to watch Wimbledon, we always made it a point to go to Vijay's singles match and Vijay and Anand when they were playing doubles and watch them. It was always good when, going to such a big tournament to be able to see, Indians compete.
You've won all the Grand Slams. What is most special about winning at Wimbledon? Do you remember the first Wimbledon that you won? The feelings that you went through? The joy was obviously there. Can you recount those feelings?
If I had to say it in one word, it was disbelief. It was a very hard final because, Leander and me were playing on court 1 because of the rain, but, we were up 5-love in the first set tiebreaker and blew it and lost the breaker. And I think we were very close to disintegrating with the pressure, but luckily for us, it rained immediately and we were stuck in the number 1 court, private holding area, just him and me. And our only 2 things that was on the table were the trophies. And I remember we didn't say one word to each other. And 15 minutes later, our coaches stormed into the room and broke the ice and told us that, it's a 5-set match. You guys are the best team in the world. You guys have to find a way to put that 1 set behind you and, start fighting from scratch, pretend it's a new match. And, I think we went out there, broke early and, found a way to win the next 3 sets, which was, we've won many slams, but I think the Wimbledon title was different.
I can't imagine what it must feel like to be world number 1. Is there pressure? Is there sometimes fear that, oh my God, or is there just so much positivity that you can't think of anything else? When you were world number 1, how did it feel?
I think you're walking on a cloud. So, like you said, there's a lot of positivity, but at the same time, the feeling you get is something that you want to continue and want it to continue and want it to continuously replicate. So, you got to put in that extra work. At McEnroe said, staying at number 1 is harder than getting there.
Look at you, almost hitting 40, looking trim as ever. What's your fitness regime? I know you're going through a bit of a rough phase as far as your knee is concerned, but talk about the average fitness regime of Mahesh Bhupathi when you're on tour.
When I'm on tour, it's a bit different, obviously, because it's, probably tennis a couple of times a day and gym once. When I'm at home, depending on the schedule with the family, it's definitely 1 gym session a day. So, I think the key is, like you said, at 40 now, it's more maintenance. You can't really teach yourself any new tricks. You want to keep yourself as healthy as possible for the few tournaments that we play during the year.
And in terms of food, do you still have to be really careful about that? Yeah, high protein or enough of carbs to feed the South Indian?
Unfortunately, you got to keep in check the number of cookies and French fries that go into the diet. But it just depends. I mean, when you're on holiday or you can binge, but closer to tournament time, you got to kind of get back in the routine.